Being as far as Shabbat and Rafah after the Shabbat. Got a lot to do this morning to prepare for the snow and other things. So we'll pick up prayers this evening. So on Mrs. Good, she directed her vehicle at the officer. That's it. It's over. The amount I showed you what the average number of rounds were in that type of situation. And that particular situation was actually increased stress and pressure because of the close proximity. A lot of times these shootings are occurring when the officer's 10, 20 feet away. And those people, will unload 7, 20, 30 rounds. Well, it's just the way psychology works. And again, action, reaction, nervous system, brain. So the key is not to cause it to turn on. Don't direct your vehicle at an officer. And I've outed officers over the years when saying, make sure you're not scamming, train the officers to get out of the way. But that was a situation you can avoid. And again, as far as the police chief saying he positions himself wrong, this isn't a regular schmucky traffic stop. He took a vantage point. If you watch him, I mean, I do the same thing at times, even when I'm shopping. You look at the video on the shopping, I did the same thing he did. If I detect, spycraft operation, it's not going to hurt anybody, but right. So what he did is he comes in, he goes around the passenger side of the vehicle. He scans, because he looks like he's not looking at anything, right? I do that too. But he's scanning. He's got peripheral vision, right? He's looking what's happening. He's looking. He sees Mrs. He gets close enough to Mrs. Good's wife. Now again, they're Bonnie and Clyde. Don't try to make any other shit about this. They're Bonnie and Clyde. They're not afraid for their life. They're Bonnie and Clyde. And if you don't know about, that's why I write out etc. The Spirit said you can't write etc. because these young people don't know what it means. You have to write etc. out, and then they'll look it up and go, oh, and maybe eventually learn it. Not a big term today, I guess. But they're Bonnie and Clyde. They're gangsters, okay? They were Bonnie and Clyde. So she get in, Ma Barker. And we're getting down the road. Now, we don't know, again, they're Bonnie and Clyde. They directed the vehicle at him in whatever way she did. 95% of the people pulled over, at least 95%, wouldn't do that. So we're not here to accept somebody's inappropriate criminal behavior as somehow lawful because everybody would do it. Again, she wouldn't probably do it if she wasn't trained and radicalized. So that's who bears the responsibility. And part of that training and radicalization might actually be the mayor and the governor. Enough of the games. Mrs. Good and her wife were out there being Bonnie and Clyde. We're being gangsters. So the officer, the cloak's proximity caused a lot more stress than they normally would have if it's 10, 20, 30 feet away. Albeit in the end, you could call it maybe a glancing blow, but it was direct impact. Just lucky he's that age. If he was like 50 or 60, maybe even 60, I guess about 60, he could have had some permanent, real serious permanent. I mean, he still might. It may appear when he's 55, 60 years old that hip doesn't work right. So it just should be dropped. It's just he only fired 4 shots. That's nothing. And the amount of time was a few seconds at the most. But again, from one point to the next point in your freeze frame is fractions of seconds. The brain in this neurology doesn't work that quick. So he's trained. He should have been trained. I don't know if he is or not. But theoretically, if you're a federal officer, you should be trained with at least 3 shots. Again, 20 shots is not unheard of. Right. There's also, I've been in training scenarios where it was a training scenario and they got so scared that they just unloaded. It was this woman that used to work for Epic. She joined the Marshal Service. And she's a little short woman. And this guy that they're using that has this, and he's going boom, boom. I mean, this thing's loud. It's a shotgun. And you're in your red gear, red man gear. And he's a monster. I don't remember who it was. Was it an instructor or somebody was a role player? I can't remember. All I know is he was tall. I remember that part. I think it was a role player. And he was like, I don't know, like 6'10" at least. Or something like that. I don't know. Looked like that. I'm short, but I'm like 5'7". But she was like, 5, maybe 1 or 2. And he's this monster with the shotgun. And of course, the red man gear just enhances his size. So he comes out like, okay, so it was like it was like a subpoena scenario. So we go to deliver a subpoena, and we're learning, subpoena delivery and all that, and or service, and okay, yeah. You talk to somebody at the desk. And you're like, and there's a door like back to the work area or something. And you say, I'm here to, can I see so-and-so, like Joe Smith or something, right? Or Joe Schmo. And the secretary says, give me a second. I'll go get it. So she goes through the door and all of a sudden you hear the loudest boom, boom, boom. And then this giant guy with a shotgun appears in the door. So this little woman, I was impressed. And it isn't because she's a woman, but she's small, petite kind of woman. And she, draws her weapon and goes boom, 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 hits him like 8 times or something like. So I've seen it play out. And as far as, what the response would be, and that's not a real shooting, but again, the pressure in a real shooting is even higher. So he even says, this guy, after we do the after action review, he says, but he's pretty much impressed. He goes, you know what? She started shooting as soon as she cleared her holster. And she lit him up right up the center from his crotch to his forehead. He said the first round he thinks went into the ground. But I think after that it was like the crotch. Another one a few inches higher, another one a few inches higher. So she hit him in the forehead. I don't think she hit the ceiling. So again, these are natural reactions. So there's nothing there. And I know you're using propaganda, but there's nothing to prosecute, nothing to investigate. If she hadn't, if the vehicle wasn't there, then, yeah, but he wouldn't have fired if the vehicle wasn't there. He didn't make a mistake. Okay, so I was explaining, I got a little sidetracked. So he came around side. He's got Mrs. Good and that side of the vehicle on his periphery. I can see where he's keeping his head, and the way he kept his head. So I believe he's looking. And he's trying to see low on the vehicle up to like the rooftop, which would be about Mrs. Good's wife's head. So he's walking and he's scanning. And he comes around front because from the front, he can see Mrs. Good. You see that on the camera. That's the vantage point he wanted. That's why he was there. And there's a but for there, regardless of what happened. And a lot of these other cases were but for too. But they still prosecuted because, the attorneys are crap. The juries are crap. And not every case is but for it. I've told you that. Well, but for her doing what she was doing that day, they wouldn't even had a reason to talk to her. Right? It's not your law abiding business to be there. It's all against the law. You could be arrested for it. The government's like, well, we got shitty juries here. It's probably not worth it. In fact, they may have arrested Mrs. Good that day, or they may have arrested her another day. Got her identity. She continued on. They scanned her stuff, and they found out that she had made several threats, to other people, and they conspired to do something to an officer, to harm an officer, and then she'd have been arrested then. She's not an okay person. She's not the little old lady driving down the street that you tried to present. It's a shame that you allowed the radicalization, because you could have arrested people for that radicalization in your state. But again, if the narcos are paying you, then the narcos are paying you. I understand that concept. But there could be penalties and repercussions for accepting narco money, fraudster money, whatever way it came. That's radicalization. That's spycraft. If you look into Central and South America and look who's involved in all of that crime, you'll find even grandmas involved. And when you go, oh, grandma. Right. Again, you're allotting emotion and mindset that they don't have. They'll kill you in a second if it means they get money, and if they can. Again, if you have information, I would go. The only person who might be able to save some of you right now is an ICE officer or a Border Patrol officer. I would find one and tell them the truth. It's just the bottom line. And again, God forbid you're a spy from a foreign nation here. Because they're there. Believe me, there are spies from Mexico here. Whether the president knows about it or not, they're here. And they're getting rich. They're going to get theirs. Right? Not going to stop them from getting wealthy. See, that's where it is, most of it. Made people that are greedy pieces of shit. I work with a bunch of greedy pieces of shit. Not everyone, but a good number of people. They sold out the United States back then. That's why we're here today, having all this issue. Told you that for 20 years. Well, some of the cases you can't charge because it's 2000, 2000 or maybe 1995 through 2020. You probably can't charge because of statute of limitation, unless you can wire them into something later. Right. The idea is they do it for a while, they become a made person, and then the new people that they bring on, then they do it. So after 5 years after they leave, it's hard to charge them with anything because statute of limitations run. But again, like I said, there is a nexus. The people doing it today are related to people that did it to me 25 years ago. Right. The cartel's part of it. The Russians were part of it. Again, it's an anti-justice league. Been there for quite some time. You can buy into it if you're a crook and got enough money. Actually, you could buy into it as the FBI if you had enough money. Maybe you are. Huh? Patience, my ass. We're going to arrest something. I don't know where that came from, but I've seen it. Patience, man, we're going to kill something. But so again, the idea is if you know something, say something. Well, you could end up dead. I'm just telling you. Life's not fair. No, I'm not going to do it. I never threatened anybody with me physically killing them ever. But all of you have threatened me with that, haven't you? Wasn't that funny? Oh yeah, we get away with it. They've said that over the years. There's actually evidence somewhere of that. Right? How they can get away with anything. Well, Trump said that. Well, you probably had Trump say that somehow. That's what they do, believe me. Right? They bring people like Trump into it by hook and crook, and it's not the same thing, but make them believe that they're part of it or whatever. Yeah, that juries are probably compromised. The jury drive. You go look back at the jury. Well, let's see who they were. Oh, they're all driving Lambos. They just bought them. Well, take peace. Well, praise God, and all that you do, praise God.